Far beyond the familiar stars of human space, in the shadow of a vast and ancient galaxy, the colossal Velkar Armada moved like a dark storm across the void. These alien ships, shaped like massive jagged shards of black metal, stretched across the depths of space, numbering in the thousands. They were the pride of the Velkar Empire, an unstoppable force designed to conquer and bend any world to their will. Every ship gleamed with advanced weaponry, and their engines pulsed with a cold, unyielding power that spoke of centuries of war and conquest. At the heart of this immense fleet, the alien commanders were confident. They spoke in low, harsh voices about how easy their victory would be. The human race was weak. They believed unworthy of standing in the path of their expansion. The Velkar had already crushed dozens of star systems, and Earth's defenses, they thought, would be no different. But amid this overwhelming force, there was one human ship, small and battered-looking compared to the vast alien vessels. The HMS Resolute was an old warship by human standards, its hull marked with patches of wear, and its systems outdated next to the alien technology. From the outside, it looked like a relic from a forgotten war, barely worth noting. The Velkar. Commanders dismissed it without a second thought, labeling it a minor annoyance that would be crushed with little effort. They had no idea what that ship represented. Inside the Resolute, Captain Myra Grant stood on the bridge, her eyes scanning the endless sea of stars through the ship's reinforced viewport. Unlike the Velkar, she knew that this battle was not just about firepower or size. It was about heart, will, and the refusal to be erased. Her crew was small but fierce, made up of humans who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. Despite the odds, they believed in their mission to defend humanity's freedom, no matter the cost. Captain Grant felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders, but she never allowed fear to take hold. Instead, she focused on every detail, monitoring the approaching fleet's movement, listening to the steady hum of the ship's engines, and preparing her people for the fight ahead. The Resolute systems might be old, but they were reliable, maintained by engineers who understood every bolt and circuit as if it were part of their own body. The crew had adapted to the ship's limitations by being creative and resourceful, finding ways to stretch their technology further than anyone expected. The alien fleet's sensors had already locked onto them, but the Velkar saw the Resolute as nothing more than a distant blip on their displays. Their confidence was their weakness, and Captain Grant knew it. She understood that the enemy's arrogance could be turned against them. Yet as she prepared her ship and crew, she also knew this was no simple battle of fire and steel. The Velkar fought with ruthless precision, and every moment of hesitation could mean destruction. The silence on the bridge was tense, but purposeful as orders were given and checked, systems powered up, and weapons tested. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their faces calm but focused. Among them were young pilots, engineers, and soldiers, each driven by the same determination to protect their home. Outside, stars glittered coldly in the distance, uncaring observers to the drama unfolding in the blackness. As the Velkar Armada drew nearer, its dark shapes growing larger against the starfield, Captain Grant's voice broke the quiet. She reminded her crew that they were not just fighting for themselves, but for all of humanity. The moment was grim, yet filled with a fierce hope. In the cold reaches of space, where the Velkar believed they held absolute power, a small human ship was preparing to defy every expectation. The Resolute's crew knew they were likely facing near-impossible odds, but they refused to be dismissed as insignificant. What the Velkar commanders failed to grasp was that humans had a unique strength, the ability to adapt, to think differently, and above all, to fight with heart. As the distance between the two forces shrank, the tension grew thick like a storm, ready to break. Each heartbeat on the Resolute matched the steady countdown to battle. Every sensor ping, every flicker of data on the monitors was a reminder that the moment of reckoning was close. Captain Grant's gaze hardened with resolve. This ship, this crew, and their courage were the last line of defense against a wave of destruction. No matter the outcome, the human spirit would not be broken. The Velkar might see them as obsolete, but in that underestimation lay humanity's greatest hope. The small, overlooked vessel was about to show the galaxy what it truly meant to fight for survival. The massive Velkar Armada hung like a dark cloud over human space, its presence both terrifying and overwhelming. Without warning, chilling message blasted through all human communication channels, an ultimatum issued by the Velkar commanders demanding immediate surrender. The message was clear and merciless. Surrender the HMS Resolute and all human forces within this sector, or face total annihilation. The words echoed through the Resolute's bridge, cold and final. But Captain Mira Grant met the demand with quiet determination rather than fear. She understood that surrender was not an option. The Velkar fleet's size was staggering, but sheer numbers did not guarantee victory, especially when their opponents were as determined and resourceful as humanity. As the crew absorbed the weight of the ultimatum, the ship's sensors began to pick up strange anomalies within the Velkar formation itself. Patterns and signals that seemed unusual for such a disciplined and experienced force. Captain Grant's sharp eyes scanned the data. The subtle irregularities in the enemy's movements raised questions. The Velkar ships appeared to rely heavily on a network of centralized command nodes, massive ships that coordinated the fleet's actions through powerful signal relays. These nodes controlled the flow of information and orders across the Armada, and without them, the fleet's ability to fight as a cohesive force would crumble. This was a critical discovery. It meant the Armada's strength also carried a hidden vulnerability. But approaching those command nodes was no easy task. They were well guarded and protected by layers of defense ships armed with devastating weapons. To attack them directly with the Resolute's limited firepower would be suicide. Recognizing the danger, Captain Grant made a bold decision to send a stealth reconnaissance team out in small, cloaked scout ships to gather more detailed intelligence. The stealth ships slipped away from the Resolute's hull and disappeared into the shadows of space, their silent engines barely a whisper against the black void. Every minute felt like an eternity as the crew waited anxiously for updates, the bridge tense but focused. When the scouts returned, the information they brought back was both alarming and promising. The command nodes were indeed crucial to the Velkar fleet's coordination, but their reliance on them was so great that even a small strike could throw the entire Armada into chaos. However, the paths to these nodes were narrow and filled with danger. The Velkar had layered their defenses with fast attack vessels, heavy turrets, and electronic countermeasures designed to detect and destroy intruders before they could strike. The situation was grim, but not hopeless. Captain Grant gathered her senior officers and engineers in the strategy room to discuss the findings and plan a way forward. The room was filled with the low hum of conversation, the tapping of consoles, and the sharp voices of people accustomed to thinking under pressure. They knew that a full-scale battle with the Velkar's overwhelming forces would be suicide. Instead, they needed to find a way to cripple the Armada from within by targeting the command nodes precisely and swiftly. The plan required them to use every advantage they had: stealth, speed, and surprise, along with the unique adaptability of human tactics. Over the following hours, the crew worked tirelessly to modify the Resolute system's programming. New algorithms to scramble the Velkar's sensors and developing specialized weapons capable of delivering focused strikes on the command nodes without triggering the fleet's defenses prematurely. Every member of the crew contributed ideas, combining old human ingenuity with salvaged alien technology. The tension on the ship grew as the deadline approached, but so did the determination. No one believed the mission would be easy, but surrender was not an option. Meanwhile, the Velkar Armada remained ominously quiet, its formations tightening as if sensing a challenge, but still unaware of the precise threat the Resolute posed. As the moment for action drew near, Captain Grant addressed her crew with words that steeled their resolve. She reminded them that the fate of humanity might depend on this small ship's success, and that even the mightiest empire could be undone by a single spark of courage and cleverness. The crew listened, their faces a mix of fear and fierce determination, knowing that beyond this point there was no turning back. In the stillness of space, Under the watchful eyes of an enemy that saw them as nothing more than a footnote, the Resolute prepared to prove that being dismissed was humanity's greatest weapon. The first contact with the Velkar was not just a moment of conflict, but the beginning of a battle where strategy and bravery would be tested to their limits. Captain Grant's ship was ready to take the risk, knowing that their survival depended on their ability to outthink and outmaneuver a foe who believed victory was assured. Every second brought the two forces closer to confrontation, and in the cold silence of the stars, the suspense hung thick. The human crew's hearts beat as one, prepared to face the unknown, to challenge fate, and to carve a path for their species' survival where none seemed possible. The HMS Resolute moved like a shadow through the vast darkness of space, cloaked in a carefully engineered field that bent light and sensors around it, rendering the ship nearly invisible, even to the advanced detection systems of the Velkar Armada. Captain Mira Grant's heart beat steadily, matching the calculated rhythm of her crew as they executed the most daring mission any human had ever attempted. The plan was dangerous and untested, but desperation bred innovation. A seeming relic among the massive alien vessels had become a beacon of hope, wielding a strange blend of old Earth technology and newly reverse-engineered Velkar systems. The cloak technology was the product of relentless nights spent in the ship's labs, combined with scavenged alien components that had once seemed indecipherable. Now they gave the Resolute an edge no one expected. As the ship slipped past the front lines of the Velkar fleet, the immense mass of enemy vessels loomed like a steel forest, vast and unyielding. The crew's hands moved quickly and silently, adjusting shields, checking weapons systems, and monitoring the cloaking integrity. Not a word was wasted. Every second was precious. The command nodes, massive fortress-like ships equipped with intricate communication arrays, pulsed faintly in the distance, the nerve centers of the Velkar fleet's overwhelming power. These nodes coordinated the entire Armada, controlling battle formations, weapon fire, and movement with precise efficiency. Disabling them meant throwing the entire fleet into chaos, but reaching them meant threading through a gauntlet of enemy fighters, turrets, and electronic countermeasures designed to detect even the slightest anomaly. The human crew moved with a quiet determination, their faces lit by the soft glow of control panels. They knew that failure would mean destruction, but the success of this strike could turn the tide of the entire war. Using a combination of manual piloting and automated evasive maneuvers, the Resolute slipped between patrolling ships, narrowly avoiding detection. Sensors flickered with warnings that were quickly analyzed and countered. The ship's engine hummed steadily, guided by the experienced hands of Pilot Lieutenant Aaron Chen, whose steady nerves and sharp reflexes had earned him a reputation for being able to fly through the most dangerous situations. With each passing moment, the distance to the command nodes shrank, and tension on the bridge thickened. Captain Grant issued calm and clear orders, her voice steady as she coordinated the attack. The weapons officer armed the newly modified pulse disruptors devices that emitted bursts of energy designed to overload the command nodes' communication arrays without destroying the ships themselves. The goal was not to annihilate, but to blind and silence, to turn the Velkar fleet's greatest strength into its fatal weakness. When the Resolute reached striking distance, the crew held their breath as the pulse disruptors fired in rapid, precise bursts. The energy waves rippled through space, slamming into the command nodes with surgical accuracy. For a moment, silence held the bridge as everyone waited for the reaction. Then, the first signs of success appeared. Communications from the Velkar fleet faltered and dropped off, one by one. The perfectly coordinated formations began to break apart, the huge ships slowing and drifting aimlessly. Confusion spread rapidly through the alien armada, their advanced systems struggling to compensate for the sudden loss of control. The Velkar commanders barked orders into voids where no ships responded, and pilots found themselves isolated, without direction or support. The once mighty armada that had seemed unstoppable was now a scattered, disorganized mass of ships drifting. In confusion, panic began to spread across the Velkar fleet, their confidence shattered by the unexpected precision and effectiveness of the human strike. The chaos was like a storm breaking, and the Resolute used the moment to retreat, cloaking again and slipping back through the broken front lines. On the bridge, cheers were quiet but heartfelt, the crew exhausted but proud. Captain Grant allowed herself a brief smile, knowing this was only the first step in a much larger battle. The Velkar, stunned and disoriented, would soon attempt to regroup and retaliate. But the human ship had already proven that even the mightiest fleets could be shaken by courage and cleverness. Back on the bridge, tactical officers immediately began analyzing the fallout from the attack, identifying weak points in the Velkar defenses created by the loss of the command nodes. Plans formed quickly, and Captain Grant's voice cut through the hum of calculations, urging her crew to prepare for the next phase. The successful strike had shifted the balance of power, but the fight was far from over. Messages began to come in from human forces nearby, inspired by the news of the Resolute's success and ready to join the counterattack. The small, overlooked ship had become a symbol of resistance and hope, a spark igniting the flames of defiance across human space. The Velkar commanders, once so confident, now faced the terrifying reality that the humans were not the weaklings they had assumed. Their arrogance had blinded them to the resourcefulness and determination of a species that refused to be conquered. In the silent vastness of space, the HMS Resolute sailed on, its crew ready to face whatever came next. Every member knew the stakes had never been higher. The impossible strike had shown the galaxy that even a small ship, armed with ingenuity and courage, could change the course of history. The battle for humanity's future had begun, and the Resolute was at its heart fighting not just for survival, but for a place among the stars. With renewed purpose, Captain Grant watched the scattered Velkar ships retreating into the distance, knowing that this victory, though critical, was only the beginning of a longer and harder war ahead. But for now, humanity had taken its first bold step against an empire that thought itself invincible, and that was a triumph no one could ignore. The HMS Resolute, still cloaked in the afterglow of its daring strike, became a beacon of hope, piercing through the darkness of fear and doubt that had settled over human space. Captain Mira Grant, fully aware of the fleeting opportunity their success had created, immediately ordered the ship's communication officer to send out a secure, encrypted signal to all nearby human fleets. The message was clear and urgent. The Velkar Armada was vulnerable, their coordination shattered, and now was the moment to strike back. Across star systems, human warships, long confined to defensive postures or hiding behind outdated protocols, received the signal with a surge of energy and resolve. The news of the Resolute's unexpected and precise attack spread like wildfire, igniting a spark that fueled the courage and determination of thousands of soldiers and crews. For the first time in many cycles, the tides of war seemed to shift. In humanity's favor, the fleets began to organize, coordinating their movements with newfound unity and purpose. Guided by the beacon that the Resolute had become, Captain Grant watched the fleet maps with sharp eyes, tracking the movement of friendly forces as they advanced. The human ships, though fewer and smaller than the Velkar's vast armada, moved with a precision and strategy born of necessity and experience. Each commander knew that they were the underdogs, but they also carried with them the fierce spirit that had always defined humanity: adaptability, bravery, and relentless will. As the human forces launched their counterattacks, the disorganized Velkar found themselves caught in a web of unexpected resistance. Without the command nodes to coordinate their strikes and defenses, the alien ships floundered, their once disciplined formations breaking apart under pressure. Confusion reigned as pilots struggled to receive orders, and groups of ships collided or left critical gaps that human fleets exploited without hesitation. The battle quickly became chaotic for the Velkar, turning from a confident march of conquest into a desperate fight for survival. Every loss weakened their fleet, and every human victory inspired more ships to join the fight. The Resolute was no longer just a ship, it was a symbol, a testament to what humans could achieve even when odds seemed impossible. News of its success traveled faster than the warships themselves, broadcasting hope to every corner of the human colonies. Civilians and soldiers alike found new strength in the idea that their small, overlooked forces could stand against a mighty empire. Meanwhile, Captain Grant remained vigilant, coordinating with fleet commanders and adapting their strategy as the battle evolved. She knew that momentum was fragile and that the Velkar would not give up easily. Their pride was wounded, and they would seek revenge with all their remaining power. But the human crews, inspired by their success and united in purpose, held their ground and pressed forward. With each victory, human tactics became more refined, blending stealth, precision, strikes, and coordinated assaults that further disoriented the enemy. The Velkar's massive ships, once symbols of unstoppable power, now became targets for swift, clever attacks that exploited every weakness exposed by the Resolute's initial strike. The galaxy watched as the balance shifted with humanity, proving that strength was not only measured in size or firepower, but in courage, ingenuity, and the refusal to accept defeat. In the midst of the chaos, the Resolute itself became a rallying point. Its name whispered with respect and hope in command centers across the stars. Captain Grant's leadership, calm under pressure and unyielding, in the face of danger, inspired her crew and allies alike. The human spirit, once overshadowed by fear and doubt, now burned brighter than ever. Though vastly outnumbered, humans showed that clever strategy and unwavering determination could topple even the most powerful foes. The Velkar, once certain of their victory, now faced the grim reality of a battle that might end in their own downfall. And for the first time, humanity saw a future where they were not just survivors, but conquerors of their fate. The battle had ended, but its echoes would resonate through human history forever. The Velkar Empire, once so confident and overwhelming in their power, now retreated into the depths of space, humbled by a force they had barely acknowledged, the spirit of humanity. The massive Armada that had threatened to crush human worlds was broken and scattered, forced to fall back and lick its wounds, while humanity stood tall and victorious. Across the countless human colonies that dotted the stars, the name HMS Resolute became a symbol of hope and defiance. Tales of the small, overlooked ship and its brave crew spread quickly. Carried by news transmissions, stories, and celebrations that united people across systems. Captain Mira Grant and her crew were hailed as heroes, not just for their victory, but for what they represented: courage in the face of impossible odds, intelligence in moments of crisis, and the unbreakable will to protect their home. Was not confined to the ship or the battlefield alone. It inspired a wave of new alliances between human colonies that had long been divided by distance or politics. Leaders who had once hesitated to unite now saw the strength that came from standing together. Resources were pooled, technologies shared, and research accelerated, all fueled by the knowledge that humanity's survival depended on its ability to innovate and cooperate. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, building on the lessons learned from the Resolute's daring strike, blending human creativity with recovered alien technology. New defense systems, stealth fields, and communication networks emerged, each designed to make humanity stronger and more prepared for whatever threats the universe might hold next. In the quiet moments after the war, amidst celebrations and rebuilding, Captain Grant often found herself alone on the Resolute's observation deck. She would gaze out at the stars, the endless expanse that had once seemed so hostile and indifferent. Now a place where humanity had claimed its place. The distant twinkle of far-off suns reminded her of all that lay ahead. New challenges, new mysteries, and perhaps new enemies. But she felt no fear. Instead, she felt a deep confidence born from the knowledge that being underestimated was humanity's greatest weapon. The Velkar had dismissed the Resolute as irrelevant, a mere relic, and that very dismissal had allowed humans to strike with precision and courage. It was a lesson carved into the history of the stars, a lesson that every future opponent would. Now know, never overlook the human spirit. As the Resolute sailed quietly through the cosmos, its crew prepared for the future with determination and hope. Their victory was not an end, but a beginning, a chance to write a new chapter for humanity. Among the stars, and in the heart of that story stood Captain Grant, ready to lead her people forward into the unknown, knowing that together there was no challenge they could not face. The legacy of the Resolute would live on, a shining example of what it meant to fight, to endure, and to triumph when the odds were against you. Through the vast darkness of space, one truth remained clear. Humanity's greatest strength was not in its ships or weapons, but in the courage to stand firm and the wisdom to seize every opportunity. The stars awaited, and humanity was ready.